The African Deep Dive podcast is brought to you by the African Technology Policy Studies Network. This podcast explores how science, technology, and innovation can drive sustainable development and global inclusion in Africa.
Okay, let's unpack this. When you hear a phrase like green technology, you probably picture the shiny new hardware, right? Solar farms, maybe some EV charging stations.
The physical stuff.
Exactly. But imagine you're trying to achieve, large-scale sustainable development in these rapidly growing economies, particularly across Africa. The policy is complex, resources can be strained.
Right.
The real game changer here, it turns out, isn't just the tech. It's this much broader, more systemic shift. It's called eco-innovation.
And that is the critical concept we really need to understand today. To do that, we're diving into a detailed analysis of the policy landscape across 6 key African nations: Botswana, Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, and Zambia.
And our source for this is a really comprehensive 2021 policy brief from the African Technology Policy Studies Network, or ATPS.
That's the one.
So our mission is pretty simple. We want to figure out what the blueprint is for these nations as they try to balance that absolutely necessary economic growth with, urgent environmental stewardship.
It's a huge balancing act.
It is. But first, we have to start with that definition, because eco-innovation is so often misunderstood. People just think, green tech, but it's far, far bigger.
That's right. And the ATPS brief gives us a really solid definition to work with. Eco-innovation is the development of products or processes that fundamentally reduce the use of natural resources.
So we're talking materials, energy, water, land.
All of it. And at the same time, decrease the release of harmful substances across the entire life cycle of whatever is being developed.
And here's the part that I think is crucial: the economic qualifier. It has to offer customer and business value.
Yes. It can't just be some costly moral imperative. It has to be economically competitive to actually work at scale.
Exactly.
And to get that whole life cycle impact, you really have to look beyond just the factory floor. The ATPS study, it references the OECD typology, which shows eco-innovation targets 4 key areas, and only 2 of them are actually technical.
Okay, so what are they?
Well, you have new products and processes, obviously. That's the tech side. But then, and this is crucial for societal transformation, you have the non-technical elements. So first, you have marketing methods. How are products promoted and priced to encourage people to make sustainable choices?
Interesting.
Second is organizations. So changes to management structures, internal systems to prioritize resource efficiency. And then finally, institutions.
And what does that mean exactly? Institutions.
It means changes to the broader societal rules, the norms, the cultural values. So, for example, if you successfully get waste separation to be a normal part of every neighborhood, that's an institutional eco-innovation.
Even if there's no new hardware involved, it's the behavior.
Precisely. It's supported by policy, and it's a huge innovation. That institutional aspect is so key, especially in African contexts where informal economies play such a massive role. It's about changing behavior at scale.
Not just swapping out a machine.
Right. And that leads us directly to the primary, and I think maybe the most surprising finding of the ATPS study when they looked at those 6 countries.
The big reveal.
Pretty much. So despite being signatories to all these major international climate and sustainability commitments.
We're talking the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, the African Union's Agenda 2063, everything.
All of it. Despite all that, none of the 6 study countries currently have an explicit, standalone national eco-innovation policy.
Not one.
Not a single one. This is what the brief calls the policy paradox. They have these huge international obligations that demand transformational change, but no unified national blueprint specifically called an eco-innovation policy to guide it.
That seems really counterintuitive. I mean, if the environmental challenges are so urgent and the economic opportunity is clear, why hasn't this dedicated policy been drafted? Is it, political inertia or something else?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it's less about a complete absence of action and more about distribution.
What do you mean?
The study found that eco-innovation principles and practices, they're not absent at all. They are just implied and carried out within dozens of other existing sectoral policies.
So it's siloed across different ministries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You find these principles active in agriculture, energy, health, trade, and especially in environment and natural resources ministries, and the ones governing water, forestry, mining. It's sort of everywhere and nowhere all at once.
Okay, can you give us a specific example of this, like hidden innovation in practice?
Sure, we can look at Ghana. Their 1992 constitution requires the government to protect the environment for posterity. Now, that's a really powerful constitutional mandate.
It's a high-level directive.
Exactly. And the Environmental Protection Agency just oversees environmental innovations under that broad legal umbrella. The work is happening through existing legal muscle, not a new policy.
And I guess the most high-profile case would be Kenya, right? The 2017 ban on single-use plastic bags. That's a perfect illustration.
A perfect one. That ban didn't require a document called Eco-Innovation Policy. It just required bold legislative action that forced immediate institutional and product innovation.
Right, by replacing those bags with biodegradable alternatives.
It was a clear top-down push, and it worked. But, and this is the big but, while that shows progress is possible, that kind of fragmentation makes it incredibly difficult to measure national progress or coordinate resources or give clear long-term signals to private innovators.
So the lack of a central policy makes everything messy.
Very. Which raises the key question, if the policy is so fragmented, is the potential economic payoff strong enough to force the kind of coordination that's required?
That's a great place for us to take a quick breather. We'll be right back to talk about that economic potential.
Thank you for listening to the African Deep Dive podcast, where we explore bold ideas shaping Africa's future.
Stay tuned for more insights coming up right after this.
And we're back. So before the break, you raised the question of the economic rationale, because this isn't just about regulatory compliance, is it? This is about fundamentally restructuring the economy.
Precisely. Eco-innovation is the core mechanism, really, for transitioning economies from being heavily resource-based.
Yeah. So relying on raw extraction, like mining, agriculture, that kind of thing.
Exactly, to becoming truly knowledge-based and innovation-driven.
To put that in simpler terms for our listeners, it's about moving from just, say, selling raw copper to selling high-value, processed, sustainably sourced components that are built with local expertise.
That's the shift. It adds exponential value. It's the difference between extracting resources and engineering efficiency. And that is what generates green growth.
And that transition has the potential for really transformational change, right? We're talking sustainable production, more jobs, new wealth, and empowerment for the continent's huge youth population.
Absolutely. And we have hard projections on this. The ATPS study didn't just speculate. They looked at the potential impact.
And the numbers for Kenya were pretty startling.
They were. Projections show that under dedicated green economy investment scenarios, Kenya's national real GDP could exceed a business-as-usual model by approximately 12% by 2030.
12%. A 12% boost to GDP, projected specifically from embracing these sustainable practices. That's a massive figure.
It's huge. And that boost isn't coming from finding more oil. It's coming from formalizing waste management systems, driving decentralized renewable energy, and promoting sustainable, value-added processing in agriculture.
So it actually builds in resilience. If a country converts its waste into energy, for example, it reduces import costs, creates a closed loop.
And that insulates it from some of those global market shocks. The economic resilience is baked right into the eco-innovation itself.
And this brings us directly to the concept that I think makes us all hang together. The circular economy. Eco-innovation is really the engine that drives the circular economy, which is maybe the biggest shift away from that traditional linear resource wasting model.
Absolutely. The circular economy aims to convert that old model extract, process, use, dispose into closed circular flows where waste actually equals a resource input.
And the study breaks this down into two parts, right? The hardware and the software.
Exactly. The hardware is the technical side. The eco-innovative technologies, the infrastructure you need to convert waste into reusable resources. Think recycling plants or decentralized water treatment systems.
Okay.
But the software is the part that's often overlooked, and it's just as important. It's the eco-innovative skills, the expertise, the business models needed to make all this technical stuff profitable and scalable.
And we are seeing real-world efforts to build that software, aren't we? Like the Recirculate project.
Yes, that project is specifically focused on capacity building, so skills and expertise for a safe circular water economy in the region. They're focused on turning water-related waste into viable resources.
So it addresses scarcity and creates a new industry at the same time.
It's a perfect micro-example of these principles applied right at the intersection of environmental and economic need. And it shows you need both the technical investment, the hardware, and the human capital, the software.
Okay, so even with this huge economic potential and international support, we know the path is never smooth. What are the big roadblocks that the ATPS brief identified?
The study pointed to two central and pretty deeply entrenched financial barriers. The first one is a straightforward funding gap.
For R&D.
For research and development, yes. Across all 6 study countries, there is chronic insufficient funding for R&D. A knowledge-based economy requires investment in new knowledge, and that investment just didn't it there. It isn't there yet at the scale required.
That's a challenge for a lot of emerging markets. But the second barrier you mentioned, that one hits the individual inventor directly, doesn't it?
It does. The second is the severe cost barrier that's tied to intellectual property rights, or IPR. The high cost of getting a patent is a massive deterrent for local innovators.
So if a small entrepreneur develops, I don't know, a brilliant new water filter system,
and they can't afford the thousands of dollars in the legal process to protect that idea, they have zero incentive to invest their own time or capital in scaling it up.
which makes that shift to a knowledge economy almost impossible at the grassroots level. If you can't protect the knowledge you create, you won't create it.
Precisely. It incentivizes staying small, staying informal, which works directly against the national goal of standardized, measurable, scalable eco-innovation.
So we've got this tension, huge potential, fragmented policy, and these concrete financial hurdles. What does the ATPS roadmap say is the path forward for these governments?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the recommendations are all about formally structuring the fragmented work that's already happening and dismantling those barriers. It really boils down to 4 key policy changes.
Okay.
First, they have to increase funding and resources. And this isn't just about relying on international grants. It's about mobilizing internal public money, private sector money, and using things like public-private partnerships to fund R&D.
Viewing it as seed capital for that 12% growth, not just an expense.
Exactly. And the second recommendation tackles that core paradox we started with.
The missing plan.
Yes. Governments are strongly advised to enact standalone laws. This means developing specific eco-innovation policies, or at least dramatically amending existing science and tech policies to take a truly holistic view.
And that policy would need to focus on the whole life cycle, right?
The entire life cycle, including things like mandatory reuse and recycling standards, and specifically addressing bottlenecks like the prohibitive cost of patents.
But trying to implement a brand new standalone policy when these principles are scattered across powerful ministries like energy and mining and agriculture, that has to be a massive political challenge.
It absolutely is, which is why the third recommendation is so vital. Standardized metrics. They need a shared vision and a clear, measurable system for tracking progress across all these different sectors.
On common language.
All common language, yes. They need to standardize indicators, maybe create a ranking system like the Global Innovation Index, but tailored for eco-innovation in an African context. Without shared metrics, you can't coordinate or hold anyone accountable.
Right. It forces those ministries to work toward the same goal. And the final recommendation.
The final one is the long game. Update education. Academic curricula at all levels, from vocational training right up to university, have to be urgently realigned to integrate eco-innovation principles.
And this isn't just a feel-good thing. This ensures the future workforce is knowledgeable. And more importantly, it orients a whole generation of learners toward those new, high-value eco-innovation careers.
The entire system collapses if you don't have the human capital, the software, to maintain the green systems and, crucially, to innovate new solutions locally.
That was a tremendously insightful deep dive. We started by defining eco-innovation as something far more than just technology. We noted that striking policy paradox explicit laws are missing, but the work is happening in these hidden sectoral silos.
And we saw the quantified, massive economic potential, that 12% GDP uplift tied to green growth.
Then we identified the levers for change, dismantling the barriers of R&D funding and patent costs, and providing that roadmap built on formal policies, standardized metrics, and a full realignment of education. This knowledge gives you, the listener, the context to understand the immense policy challenge facing these nations as they try to pioneer a path towards sustainable, knowledge-based economies. So here's a final thought for you to chew on.
Okay.
The recommendations call for increasing R&D funding and aligning academic curricula to these new careers. If a government successfully does this, Which sector water management, sustainable agriculture, or waste to energy do you think will produce the first globally competitive, multidisciplinary eco-innovation firm led entirely by that newly educated generation? Something to explore on your own.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We hope you'll join us again next week.
Thank you for listening. Join us every Thursday for more insightful conversations.